وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله لقد جاءت رسلنا بالحق السلام عليك يا رسول الله وعلى أهل بيتك المظلومين سيما الإمام المبين والكهف الحصين وغياث المضطر المستكين مولانا وولي أمرنا الحجة ابن الحسن فداه أرواح العالمين السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى المستشهدين بين يديك ورحمة الله وبركاته. Please recite aloud salawat. There is a serious medical condition that afflicts the soul rather than the body, causing complete blindness, affecting not the physical eye, but your inner eye, and your ability to see the facts and to see the realities. You might be able to see with your eyes, see all the colors, all the shades, all the dimensions. But when it comes to seeing beyond that, your ability to see the realities will be taken away from you. You will only be able to see the facade. You will only have a superficial view of life. In general, there are diseases that afflict the body, and there are diseases that afflict the soul. There are some similarities between the two, and there are differences between the two. But generally speaking, the diseases of the soul are much more aggressive than the diseases of the body, the physical body. Why? Because the soul, the essence of the soul, is much stronger. And we have narrations that say the reason why the soul has been placed in the physical body to confine it. Otherwise, the soul is unrestricted. The soul can move freely, can fly from one place to the other. And if it wasn't for these restrictions that are imposed on us through the physical body, our arrogance would be much more. But because the soul is confined in the body, we need to sleep, we need to go to the bathroom, we are restricted when it comes to our movements. But the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did this is to tame our arrogance. But anything associated with the soul is much stronger than anything associated with the body, including the diseases. With the diseases of the body, the most that a disease can do to you is kill you, right? There's nothing beyond death when it comes to the physical diseases. These cancerous cells will die after our death because they need food, they need protein. But after we die, they die as well. But when it comes to the diseases of the soul, they will haunt us even after our death. The impact of these diseases will stretch till after we die and for eternity. Furthermore, with the diseases of the soul, they're not only detrimental to our health, to us, but they're detrimental to others as well, as opposed to the diseases of the body. One single disease that afflicted the soul of one person, and his name is Fir'aun. He yearned for power. He gagged for authority. He saw a dream that a child, a newborn, will grow up to overthrow him, to bring him down from his throne. He asks the experts in dream interpretation. They tell him that a boy from the Israelites will be born this year, and he will bring you down from your throne. He will overthrow you. So he decides to kill every newborn. And he ended up killing 90,000 fetuses, ripping the stomachs of the women of the Israelites, killing every newborn, every fetus that was supposed to be born on that year. And look at the irony. Musa alayhi salam was born. His mother gave birth to a child. And then this child was raised by none other than Fir'aun himself. He grew up in the palace of Fir'aun. When his wife Sarah took the child from the river, she approached her husband Fir'aun. She said, "We don't have any children. Let's raise him. قُرَّةُ عَيْنٍ لِي وَلَكَ." He will be the fruit of my eye and the fruit of your eye. The narrations tell us that Fir'aun said he'll be the fruit of your eye, not my eye. The narrations tell us that if Fir'aun had said he will be the fruit of my eye, he would have been guided by Musa alayhi salam. This is how much our intention impacts us. When you have the intention to do good, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you the divine support. But from the beginning, He closed that door. He said, this boy will be the fruit of your eye and not the fruit of my eye. She was guided through Musa alayhi salam. She became a believer, but he didn't become a believer. But one single disease afflicting his soul, this disease led to his destruction and the destruction of all the Egyptians and the killing of 90,000 fetuses. Now, one of the similarities between the diseases that affect the soul and the diseases that affect the body is that you have to go through the same process when it comes to diagnosing the disease, and when it comes to examining the symptoms, the cause, and exploring the options when it comes to the form of treatment that you want to pursue in uprooting that disease. So with respect to diagnosing the disease, we are taught from the very beginning when we come to this world by health experts that you should listen attentively to your body. if you feel unwell, say lightheaded, or if there is a sudden loss of appetite that you experience, or unexplained loss of weight, for example, or your body start to exhibit neurological symptoms, you feel unwell. If these symptoms persist for 1 week or more, then you have to seek medical attention. The first thing that you do, that's what most people do, they go to the internet. They go online. There are websites that provide all the information that you need. The website asks you questions about what you experience, about your condition, ruling out all the diseases, and then tells you that this medical condition that you suffer from could be this, or this, or this, and you should see a doctor. So you go to see a doctor. The doctor examines you thoroughly, asks you many questions, and then sees these symptoms against a database, medical database, to examine them, to see what you're suffering from. And if the doctor cannot determine what your disease is, what your ailment is, what you're suffering from, then he will give you blood tests that you have to do. And then your blood tests, the results, will be compared to your previous blood tests to see if there are any irregular things happening in your body. If the doctor still cannot determine what you're suffering from, he will probably tell you to do an MRI to detect any abnormalities in your bodies, in your body, in your organs. Now, we are taught to seek medical attention if we feel unwell. But when it comes to the diseases that afflict the soul, sometimes we live with certain conditions that exhibit symptoms that inform us, notify us of an underlying condition, a disease that's causing these symptoms, but we don't notice. We don't understand these symptoms. We don't understand that these symptoms are indicative of a disease. That's why some people live with a condition, a medical condition, a disease that afflicts the soul for 60 years. A fatal, highly contagious disease that afflicts the soul without us realizing that we have this disease. Envy, jealousy, greed, power. These things, these are diseases that afflict the soul. And sometimes, and this is something that many parents might relate to, we see these symptoms in our children. For example, you have a 3-year-old daughter, a 4-year-old son. He's playing with one of his peers, with his cousin, with his friend, with his younger sibling. All of a sudden, you see that your son is reacting or acting aggressively. He attacks his younger sibling and then comes back to you while he's crying. It doesn't really make sense. He's the one that attacked his younger brother, and he comes back, returns to you while he's crying. You understand that the reason why he's crying and the reason why he acted violently and aggressively is because his younger brother got a present. His cousin got a doll while he didn't get the doll. So out of envy, he reacted this way. Then we grow up, but we don't grow out of these conditions. Yes, as adults, we react differently. We might not be aggressive as a child, but the envy will be reflected in a different way. Will be reflected in a comment, a negative comment that we leave on Instagram, for example. Or when the name of that person is mentioned, the name of that person that we envy is mentioned, we make a negative comment about that person without realizing that the way that I'm behaving is because of a disease that I have. And this disease needs to be diagnosed. So I need to understand that there are diseases that might afflict my soul. And then I need to examine myself. Everything that I say, everything that I do needs to be thoroughly examined and linked with underlying conditions. So the first step that we usually fail to embark on is examining our behavior. And then connecting the things that we do, our behavior, with certain conditions. Then we have to seek medical attention. This is why narrations tell us that every mu'min, every faithful person in the world, to maintain his religiosity and to remain faithful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every person is in need of three things. The first thing is wa'idun, someone that admonishes him, someone that would give him sincere advice, someone that pinpoints and shows him where his flaws are. But that person needs to have a couple of characteristics. The first thing is that he needs to be sincere. Because sometimes in a fight, a person might say that you did this, you did that, you're not a good person, and shows you your flaws, but that person is not sincere. This is why the narration tells us that if you want to tell someone about his flaws or her flaws, you shouldn't do it in public, you should do it in private. If they do it in public, this is a sign that they're not sincere. They want to tell other people about your flaws. So they need to be sincere. And number two, they need to be aware of your situation. They need to be aware of what you're going through. And usually we don't like criticism. This is why if we have someone that has an oversight, someone that supervises over our life, like our parents, we try to limit their influence on us. Why? Because we don't like it. They're fully aware of who we are, what we do, and they criticize us when we, embark on evil things. Or when it's your spouse or your in-laws, the people that we see as people that interfere in our lives. We need to have someone. The hadith says that you need to befriend someone that tells you about your flaws. You need to hire someone, employ someone to criticize you, give you constructive criticism. You need to employ that person. You need to hire that person. Because if you have a friend, and we usually like friends that never tell us about our flaws. That's what we like, right? But the hadith says that a true friend is a friend that tells you about your flaws. You tell them about their flaws, they tell you about their flaws. Because if they don't tell you about your flaws, if they conceal your flaws, then they have betrayed you. This is not what a true friend would do to his friend. No, he tells you about your flaws. So you find someone who is sincere and who is aware of your lifestyle and who has knowledge, who has experience. Because we see this, it's a common phenomenon in the community. She has a friend, right? She calls her friend and she tells her that, I've been having rough times with my mother. Your friend might not have experience on how to deal with your parents. She gives you the wrong advice. Stop talking to your mother, for example. That's wrong. You need to have someone who has experience and have the necessary tools and knowledge from the correct sources, from the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, to give you a sincere word of advice as to how to solve this problem, how to rectify this issue. So you need someone with these three characteristics. And number two, in addition to someone giving you a word of advice and showing you your mistakes, you need to have something that works within you. like a device that you should activate that gives you direction in life, like a moral compass. When you do something bad, and then when you want to go to sleep at night, the hadith says, لَيْسَ مِنَّا. A person that does not follow these guidelines is not a true follower of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. You need to do what? You need to spend few minutes. Sometimes all it takes is 1 minute to go through what you did during the day, what you said during the day. Question your motives. Be very critical of yourself. You need to be an open book, because you're alone. You're alone. You have nothing to fear. And you're aware of your deficiencies. Al-mu'min bi-nafsihi al-dhanin. You should interrogate yourself. Why did I do this? Why did I say this? Why did I yell, scream when I was talking to my wife, for example? Why did I mistreat my mother like this? Go through what you did. Judge yourself. The hadith says, حاسبوا أنفسكم قبل أن تحاسبوا. Judge yourself before you are judged on the day of judgment. وموتوا قبل أن تموتوا. And die before you die, literally, in the literal sense. Before you are placed in the grave and are judged by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Consider yourself dead and judge yourself to rectify your mistakes. So you need to have this device and activate this device, like an ICD or a defibrillator that is planted in the chest. When the heart rates go low, the device gives electric pulse to the heart. When the heart rates become the heartbeats are rapid, it will give the heart an electric shock. And this is what we need, like a device planted in our chest to tell us when we go astray and when we do good. Even if you don't find the encouragement in the society and the community, because sometimes people do good and they don't find the encouragement, the support from the community, this will demotivate them from carrying out good deeds. But you should encourage yourself. When I, for example, gave charity to the poor, that was a good thing. I need to do more of this. And number 3, the hadith says, you need the divine support from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just like the physical diseases that we are afflicted with. You go to the doctor diagnoses the disease, and then he gives you the medication to take. You have 2 patients with the same ailment, with the same disease, who come to the same doctor and take the same medication. One is cured and the other dies. Why? Because the shifa, the cure, comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we are in need of these 3 things. Now this condition that I'm talking about leads to complete blindness. Will strip you from your ability to see things clearly. Things that are absolutely obvious, you won't be able to see them. And if all the people in the world, they tell you that this route that you're taking, this path that you're taking will lead to destruction, you won't understand. You won't comprehend. Why? Because you're blind. You can't see things with your inner eye. You're blind. Amr ibn al-As, the famous advisor to Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, he was in the holy city of Medina during Uthman's time. And during the revolution, he ran away. He went to Palestine. After the death of Uthman, all the Muslims came and they pledged their allegiance to Amir al-Mu'mineen, to the commander of the faithful. And they pledged their allegiance on the 18th of Dhul Hijjah, 33 years later, on the same day that the Prophet made that announcement appointing Amir al-Mu'mineen to be his successor. So he ran away, but after Amir al-Mu'mineen assumed power, he decided to come back to Medina to join the righteous and legitimate Caliph and successor of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. When he received a letter from Muawiyah telling him to join him, so he took the letter, he read it, he didn't know what to do. So he left Palestine. On his way back, he reached a crossroads. To the right, he goes to Medina. To the left, he goes to Sham. So he consults his children. He had two sons, Abdullah and Muhammad. Muhammad says to him, Dad, the end is near. In no time, your life will come to an end and you will die. So it's not worth it to join Muawiyah. We all know who Muawiyah is. Muawiyah is a crook. Muawiyah is trying to deceive you. Muawiyah was with his father when he waged several wars against Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he was the standard bearer of the flag of the enemies of Rasulullah in every single war that he participated in. We all know who Muawiyah is. His other son Abdullah said to him, Dad, you know, if you die like this, no one will ever know about your achievements, your legacy. You need to be in the limelight. And if you join Muawiyah, you could negotiate with him, and he might give you something. He might give you the reins and authority of one of the nations, one of the countries that belongs to the Muslim empire. So he was a little bit confused as to what to do. But because of this condition, his inability to see the reality, he decided to join Muawiyah. Even though he was 60 back then. He knew that he will be meeting his final fate soon. But even death, which is the most obvious thing, will be something that we will fail to see. Amir al-Mu'mineen in a hadith says, ما رأيت يقينا لا شك فيه أشبه من شك لا يقين فيه كالموت. I've never seen a certainty, something that we're so confident about that it will happen, that it will take place, that looks more like something doubtful, that doesn't have any certainty associated with it, like death. So we all know that death has been prescribed upon us, and yet the way we deal with it, as if it's been prescribed on other people, not us, as if we're exempt from this divine law. كأنه على غيرنا كتب. We see the death of our loved ones. The narration says that one day one of the prophets, he asked God to inform him, to notify him before his death time approaches. God agreed. All of a sudden, one day, the angel of death comes down on him. So he says to the angel of death, did you come to visit me or to take my soul? He said, I don't visit anybody. If I come to take the soul. So he said, but I have an agreement with God. He told me that he will inform me and notify me before my death. So the angel of death doesn't know what to do. He goes back to God and he says to him, Ya Ilahi, he's your prophet and he's telling me that he is in agreement with you. He said, yes, and tell him that I informed you. So he goes back to the prophet and he says, God says I informed you. He said, when did you inform me? I never received an email. I never received a text message. No one told me. So he goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. God says to him that, you know how I told you? You know how I informed you? Your mother died. Your father died. Your brother died. Your neighbor died. إِذَا كَثُرَ النَّاعِي عَلَيْكَ جَاءَ النَّاعِي إِلَيْكَ. If you kept receiving death notices of people, one day people will receive your death notice as well. So this is how I informed you. So this guy, he knew that he's dying soon. He was 60. Maybe he'll live for another 10 years, 20 years, but eventually he'll die. And he knows that Muawiyah is a crook. But because he doesn't have the ability to see, because he's blind, he can't even see death. That's why he joins Muawiyah. When he sees Muawiyah, he says, Ya Muawiyah, you know why I came? Because I want you to give me something in exchange for my loyalty to you. He said, what do you want? He said, I'll write it down. He wrote that I want Egypt from you. I want to govern Egypt, preside over the people of Egypt. So Muawiyah said, what? You want a whole country? He said, yes. And you're deceiving me. You know why? Because I'm selling my religion, my akhirah, my hereafter in exchange for your dunya, so that you prosper. Muawiyah said, okay, I'll sign this piece of paper, but I might not keep my promise. I might deceive you. I can deceive you. He said, no, you can't. I'm smarter than you. Muawiyah said, you know, let me tell you something. Let me whisper something in your ear. So he came close to Muawiyah. Muawiyah bit his ear. He said to him, what an idiot. We're alone in this room. No one's here to listen to our conversation. And yet I was able to deceive, so I can deceive you. Then he came out, his children were waiting outside, Abdullah and Muhammad. He said, what happened? He said, I got Egypt. So his son Abdullah said, wow, Egypt, you're going to become the president, the governor of Egypt. He said, his other son, he said, he deceived you because you sold your religion in exchange for Muawiyah's dunya. So the cause of this condition is the obsession with this dunya. When you develop an obsession with this dunya, you won't be able to see the blind spots. This is why the hadith says, حُبُّ الشَّيْءِ يُعْمِي وَيُصِمُّ. When you fall in love with someone or something, even if the whole world tell you that this man that you intend to marry has a lot of deficiencies, but because you've fallen in love with him, you won't be able to see the deficiencies. Later on in life, you'll say, yeah, my mother told me, my father told me, but I didn't listen to them. No, you listened to them. You heard what they said, but you were blind. You couldn't see their deficiencies. So the obsession with this dunya will take away your ability to see things clearly. Otherwise, it's obvious. You see people who are not that smart, they could see the flaws, but you can't because you're blind. He's a 33-year-old prince, and he is one heartbeat away from becoming the king of a superpower, a country that controls the oil production of the civilization. 11.7 million barrels of oil. He has formed international alliances, but he has inner blindness. Inner blindness. He thought what he has is there to stay. Through these international alliances, the millions of dollars that he's spending on lobbying firms, what he did wasn't due to a miscalculation. No, it's due to his inability to see things. He thought that when he was able to get away with, killing innocent people in a neighboring country and arresting activists, women, children, then killing another citizen in an office that belongs to him. And with absolute monarchies, they see their nation as subjects to them. So you would easily be able to get away with the death of this guy. What he failed to see was the fact that what you have can be taken away from you. Even if you've formed international alliances and you have their backing, there are so many variables. Things can go wrong, and everything that you have can be taken away from you. overnight. All these international alliances, everything that he has, all the money that he has, to no avail. Became useless overnight. Everyone turned against him. Even his own allies turned against him. Wallahu min wara'ihim muhit. Don't think, yes, you might be able to initiate, to start the action, but the outcome of the action is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why Lady Zainab, when she gave that fiery sermon in the assembly of Yazid, the first thing that she said to him was, diagnose his condition, what he's suffering from. Yazid was sitting on his throne. Yazid was both, he was intoxicated from alcohol because he was sipping alcohol while he was sitting on his throne. And there are other forms of intoxications as well. For example, the intoxication of wealth. You're wealthy, this is a form of intoxication. Or the intoxication of power. He had all these things, and plus he had become victorious over his enemies. So he sat there while the head of Imam al-Hussein was inside, the severed head of Imam al-Hussein was inside the bucket. And he would be hitting the head of the Imam with his stick in front of Lady Zainab alayhi salam while sipping alcohol. He would drink from the alcohol and pour the remaining next to the bucket. And you know, the Ahlul Bayt are pure. Maybe killing them would be normal to them. All of them were martyred, but when it comes to these things, you can't bring these two together. Alcohol, these impurities, with the Ahlul Bayt who are infallible, who are flawless, who are sinless. This was very difficult for Lady Zainab to see. So she stood up and she gave a fiery sermon that has no parallel in history. She said, أَظَنَنْتَ يَا يَزِيد. Did you think, O Yazid? She calls him by his first name. Everyone calls him O Amir, O King, O Prince, but she says, O Yazid. She belittles him. She says to him that إِنِّي لَأَسْتَصْغِرُ قَدْرَكَ, I belittle you. Who are you? أظننت يا يزيد أنك أخذت علينا أقطار الأرض وآفاق السماء. Did you think by killing us, by arresting us, by parading us like this, to humiliate us, by shackling us with chains, أن بنا على الله هوانا وبك عليه كرامة? Did you think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you, respects you? He's trying to elevate you while He's trying to belittle us. فنظرت في عطفك وشمخت بأنفك جذلان مسرورا. Look at how arrogant you are. حيث صفى لك ملكنا وكانت الدنيا لك مستوسقة وَالْأُمُورِ لَكَ مُتَّسِقَةً. You think that things will stay like that forever, O Yazid? No, you're wrong. You're blind. And subhanallah, he only ruled for 3 years. Just 3 years. In the first year, he killed Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. In the second year, he demolished the Kaaba. In the third year, he conquered the holy city of Medina, killing thousands of people. Some of them were the companions of the Prophet. And he allowed his soldiers to desecrate the sanctity of the holy city of Medina, raping 10,000 virgin women. 9 months later, you had 10,000 children that were born out of wedlock. Just 3 years. During his last year, he went to Hajj. As he was returning from Hajj, he recited a poem talking to the mountains that surround the Kaaba. In his poem, he said, I wish that I will never see you ever again. The hadith says that if you felt that way after going to Hajj, that means your end is near. 3 years later, he died. He's gone for good. And Lady Zainab diagnosed this condition, and she warned him that you feel arrogant now. You think that life will stay that way forever? Oh no, you're wrong. But this can happen to us as well. We might think that our health, our wealth, our position in the society, will think that nothing will ever change that. I'll remain wealthy because I have secured my career. I am wealthy. I will never lose my wealth. I have health. But there are so many variables. Things can change. Your health can be taken away from you. So if you have that fear in you, this fear will tame you. But if you don't have that fear, you will act freely. من أمن العقوبة أساء الأدب. If you feel immune from punishment and you feel untamed, you will do whatever you desire to do, and this will be your end. This is why we always need this fear. Our health will be taken away from us one day. I met a brother less than a month ago here in the United States. He said that I came to America 30 years ago, and I worked hard. I labored day and night. I built a fortune, and I was able to buy 3 houses with my money. Less than 3 months ago, I was diagnosed with liver cancer. Na'udhu billah. Na'udhu billah. Nastajiru billah. The hadith says that if you see someone who is afflicted with a disease, if you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect you from this particular disease, you won't catch that disease. This is so you appreciate your health, and this is so you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know that the shifa comes from God, and if He wants to give you protection, He can. So he said, I was diagnosed with this disease, and now I have to take this injection every fortnight. The injection costs roughly $80,000. I have to pay $15,000 of this money, and the insurance company pays the rest. He said, now that I'm talking to you, my balance is 0. I have 3 houses, but these 3 houses will be liquidated in no time. And then he said, 30 years of hard labor, all of a sudden liquidated in less than 3 weeks. Your health will be taken away from you. Your wealth will be taken away from you. Everything will be taken away from you. Things will not stay that way all the time. And this is what gave Lady Zainab the strength to talk, the strength to carry these insurmountable ordeals, these calamities that Lady Zainab saw. These are unmatched. They have no parallel in history. After the death of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, she left the tents to go and find the body of her brother. But she can't identify his body. Where to look? Where is his body? So she goes inside the battlefield to rummage through the bodies. But she can't identify the body of her beloved brother, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, until she saw a body with all the bruises and injuries and wounds and all the arrows and spears and daggers and swords. She said, this must be the body of my brother, Abu Abdullah. But the body was lying face down. We all know it's makruh to sleep on your stomach, on your face, right? Then why was the Imam lying on his stomach? Why? Imam Zayn al-Abidin answers the question in the assembly of Yazid when he said, أَنَا ابْنُ الْمَذْبُوحِ مِنَ الْقَفَى. I am the son of the one that was slaughtered from his back. When you want to slaughter a sheep, you wouldn't do that. But with Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, this is what these wicked people did. Now Lady Zainab comes to identify the body of her brother. But how do you identify someone? Through his face, right? But the Imam is decapitated. Assalamu ala al-manhur fil wara. If you can't identify the body through the head, then you identify the body through the clothes that they are wearing. But the Imam, they looted his shirt. As-salamu ala al-badan as-salim. The Lady Zainab said, okay, there is one sign that I could look for to identify the body. The Imam had a ring, right? So she looked to examine his ring, only to find that his finger is missing. Yeah. Because when these wicked people came to loot the possessions of Aba Abdullah, one wicked man wanted to steal his ring. He couldn't take out the ring, so he severed his finger. گلی گم کرده ام می جویم او را به هر گل می رسم می بویم او را گل من یک نشانی بر بدن داشت، یکی پیراهن کهنه به تن داشت. برادر ای سلیمان زمانی، چرا انگشت و انگشتر نداری؟ اگر کشتن چرا آبت ندادن؟ اگر کشتن چرا خاکت نکردن؟ ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والعاقبة للمتقين. Let's recite Dua al-Faraj with one loud voice. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى